Welcome to the Intentional Leader Podcast presented by Reenergize Professional Coaching. We appreciate you listening in and learning with us. The stories and leadership tips you hear will help you become a great leader. Listen intentionally. Now, to our host, Sean Olson.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Intentional Leader Podcast. This is the podcast where you hear the real stories of people just like you who have become extraordinary leaders. You'll learn some valuable lessons from their lives, lessons you can apply to become the best leader you were created to be. When you become an intentional leader, lives are changed. I'm your host, Sean Olson. I am an author, speaker, business owner, and executive coach, and we are glad to have you on this episode of the Intentional Leader Podcast. I am pleased to introduce our guest today. Her name is Grote Abell. She is the Chief Purpose Officer and the Executive Chairwoman of the Board of Donato's Pizza. For those of you listeners that know Donato's Pizza, you know the incredible taste and flavor that they bring to the table, but their product is an awesome part of their story, but who they are as a company is an even better part of it. So listeners, you're in for a treat today. I encourage you to hit that subscribe button as we get going today so you can catch every episode of the Intentional Leader Podcast. Jane, it is a pleasure to have you on our show. Welcome to the Intentional Leader Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you. I appreciate it.
Our pleasure. And Donato's Pizza, I'm a big fan of it. I've been a big fan for a long time. And you are based here in Columbus, Ohio, where we are based. And so we're kind of neighbors in that way. But we really appreciate you jumping on board here today. I love the vision of the pizza behind you with all the pepperoni. And I know you guys have the great honor being the edge-to-edge pizza, right? Where'd that come from?
That's correct. Actually, some people will call it Columbus style, but 61 years ago when my dad founded the business, which Donato's means to give a good thing, it's Latin derivative, was really about giving it the same consistent product to our customers every single time. And so we put over 100 pieces of pepperoni on every large pepperoni pizza. And yes, people count them all the time, and it's important that they're edge to edge. So we actually put about 103 to 106. We weigh it to make sure that it's right. But the idea behind that is making sure that every time you take a bite of pizza, you get the exact same ingredients every time.
That's awesome. I'm laughing that people actually count it out just to make sure and verify you guys are doing what you say. Hey, Jen. Yeah, you're familiar with the podcast. We open up with our guests just kind of walking us through their professional story and leadership lessons learned along the way. And I know yours is a great story with this family business. So just kind of walk us through some of the history and the leadership lessons you've learned along the way.
Thank you. Yes, I always say family businesses can be very magical, but they can also be very messy sometimes. And so we've had both in our 61 years of being in business, but I'll walk you all the way back to when my dad started in business. I won't go into every great detail, but there's been so many life lessons for us as a family business. And really, my dad went into business. He worked as a pizza maker when he was 13, 14, 15 years of age. Wow. And what he found was that the people managing the business sometimes always treated the customers right, always treated the associates right, made sure the pizzas was the same every single time. And then he worked for some people that would water down the sauce or take pepperonis off or make the pizza different. And, at an early age, he learned how important it was, almost like a contract with that customer. When we say we're going to sell this product to you, that it's going to be the same every single time. And so that was his passion. But even beyond that, bigger than that, his passion was really about building a business where he could treat others the way he wanted to be treated. And that's the golden rule and also the platinum rule, but really founded on treating others the way he wanted to be treated. And so that's when he had an opportunity, actually, at age 16, to go into business for the first time on his own. And my grandpa was like, no, you're not. You're going to stay in school. You're going to go to college. This pizza thing's just a fad anyway, back in the late 50s. And so turns out it wasn't a fad. But my dad stayed in school. He went to Ohio State. He continued to work in the pizza business. And then at the age of 18, going on to 19, he had an opportunity to buy the business again. And so for $1,300, he borrowed money from his future father-in-law and his dad, and opened up his very first pizza place on the south side of Columbus. And that truly, really, Donato's meaning to give a good thing was truly about bringing not just a great pizza to every neighborhood in the communities that we did business, but also about bringing our principals to work with us and really building a business based on the power of love. So as a little girl in a family business, I had a
Mhm.
first row seat, right? We lived right
Yeah.
behind our first location on the south side of Columbus, and our front yard was the back of the restaurant. So every
Wow.
night, Dad, when customers would come in to get their pizza, he would send them back to the house. And every night, my mom would open up the door in our living room to our neighbors and our customers and their families and their friends. And that's, I think, at an early age, I learned a lot about hospitality. So,
Yeah.
being 7, 8, 9 years of age, entertaining customers in your own home really opened my eyes to being in business is important, but really it's about being in the people business and not just for your own associates, but for your customers and your neighbors and the people that are really in business with you. And so we grew. I'll just briefly, my career history is I worked in
Sure.
operations most of my life. Worked
Mhm.
in the restaurants. Worked in the commissary with my grandma, my grandpa, making our sausage and our meatball recipe, cracking eggs. I cracked a lot of eggs during the day, and uh, all through high school, I worked in our restaurants. Through college, I went to the Ohio State University. I managed in our restaurants all through college, all through the summers. And once I graduated from Ohio State in organizational design and
Mm.
communications, I headed up what was then called, long time ago, personnel department.
Yeah.
But I changed the name to the people department early in the 1990s, mostly because truly the essence of being in business is about people. And so we changed it to the people department. I became our chief people officer and grew that until 1999. McDonald's approached us about selling our business, which was never on our radar. We were looking to grow, but not by selling the business. And so and this is back in the day when they were doing a meal occasion strategy and they invested in Chipotle, they invested in Boston Market, and really they wanted to get into the pizza category because they tried pizza
Right.
themselves and it didn't work. And so when they approached us, my dad was all about this is so awesome. We have an opportunity to really influence the world's largest restaurant company on how to do business based on the power of love and bring in your
Wow.
principals to work with you. So that was his vision. Um,
Yeah.
for me, as a chief people officer, I was probably a little bit more in the really trying to figure out how do we sell our family business to the world's largest restaurant company and keep our soul and keep our spirit. So that was kind of my mantra. Like, if we're going to do this, then we have to stay true to who we are and what our values are and maintain that as we grow. And so I'll share later if you want just
Yeah.
my experience during those 4 years and kind of what I ended up building out as my 4 C's of leadership. That didn't work out so well with McDonald's. And so I had heard, actually, I was driving into work one day and heard on NPR that they were going to sell or close all of Donato's. And this is
Wow.
in the year 2003. And so they were getting a lot of heat because their stock went down. And so that's when I heard it on the news. And I walked in the office, and my dad was in the office. And at this time, my family, my brother, sister, mom, and dad had all left the business. So it was just my dad and I still
Mm.
left in the business. And he sat down, and I was like, we got to buy the business, Dad. I don't know how to buy back our family business from the world's largest restaurant company, but I
Right.
believe in what we're doing. I believe in our people. We have 5,000 people, and I really need, I was talking to my dad, like, I really need you because you're super smart and you're visionary. But I also really need your money because I don't have enough money to buy it back.
Exactly.
Fortunately, he said absolutely. So we put a team
Yeah.
together and ended up buying the company back. My dad and I bought it back in 2003. It was a
Wow.
great experience. It was a company we were losing about $7.5 million at the time. So we
Wow.
sold high, bought low, had to work on turning some things around, and then have been able to grow ever since.
Wow. So that's an incredible story. Thank you for sharing that. So I love the aspect that you sold it because you want to have a larger impact, right? Because McDonald's is massive compared to where Donato's was at that point. It didn't work out for whatever reason. We don't have to go into the reasons behind that. But what was the emotion like for you and your dad knowing this was your baby? You gave the baby up and now it wasn't really working the way that you'd hoped it would, and then the opportunity to buy it back. But what were the emotions during that transition? Because I know there's a lot of listeners that are entrepreneurs and solopreneurs that had that vision of what they wanted to have happen, and it doesn't go the way they expect, but you have to keep on pushing forward. So what were those emotions? How'd you navigate that season?
Not very well. So I think for me, what happened, so after my mom and my brother and sister had left the company, and it was just my dad and I really, even though I was our chief people officer, I didn't do a very good job keeping the soul of the company alive because I started working in fear. And
Mm,
what happened during that time was we got a new leader, CEO that was running the business, rest in peace. Great guy, but his leadership style was completely different than who we were. So I would say it didn't work for a number of reasons. One, tried to change our concept and be a dine-in concept versus just what we truly were, which is mostly pickup and delivery. So that was one aspect. Another aspect was building out the buildings faster than we were developing our people, but also in changing that concept, changed who we were. So we had to do front of the house and back of the house for dining room, which was really a different strategy for us. And our sales to investment ratio was way upside down. So we were building
wow.
buildings bigger than our sales. So all of that was just really the aspects of business, right? The fundamentals of business
Mhm.
that you could say went wrong. But what went wrong internally was really for myself as our chief people officer. And I say I started working in fear, and I wasn't fearful of losing my job because I had an employment contract. It wasn't a fear base of really truly understanding who we were. It was a
Mhm.
fear that we were going to lose our culture. And
Mm,
I started operating in a different way, meaning I felt like I had to put armor on, or you could call it the imposter syndrome, as we say today,
yeah,
or code switching. Because all of a sudden our G&A went from $10 million dollars a year to $32 million dollars a year. So we had
mm,
all these new people come on board. And when you try to create a culture that really is inclusive of
yeah,
all different cultures and many different companies that came on board with us, it was a bit of an overwhelming task, but also if you lose yourself in the process, which I did, then the shadow that you cast is long, right? And so I started working in fear in the sense that fearful we were losing our culture, but I started changing a little bit of the way I operated. So I felt
yeah,
like, okay, now I'm working in this public company. It's the only time I've ever worked anywhere else. So I must start to operate this way instead of the way that I always operated. Uh, and it wasn't an unethical thing. I didn't do anything in the sense that you would say that wasn't appropriate as a leader, but it wasn't true to who we are. And so I lost the courage to have my voice. I lost the
mm,
courage to live my character out loud. I lost the courage to make mistakes. And so in doing that, you lose your voice and
yeah,
you become fearful and you start working harder and your decisions become unclear and cloudy. And then you get paralyzed. And when you're working in fear and you're really honestly, truly, it was operating more off of what my agenda was or what my position was versus really what the soul of the company needed to be.
yeah,
And that's it's kind of one of those things that happen over time.
mhm,
And then I had an awakening, and it was a decision time for us as a company that we had to shut down a market, and I disagreed with it. And I started going down this path of doing it the way that McDonald's would do it, even though I knew it wasn't true to who and what we were. And so I think it was that time that I know it was that time I looked in the mirror, and I just remember not liking who I was anymore and not liking what I
yeah,
stood for anymore. And so I decided at that moment, if we were going to do this, then I was going to do it with honesty and integrity and with love, and we were going to do it the right way. And so I write about that in the book, but it was a pretty monumental moment for me because it also meant leading a team and getting a team together behind a strategy that was going to cost us more money.
yeah,
But we did it because it was the right thing to do. So lots of emotions during that time. But
I bet.
fortunately, getting back to truly my core purpose and who I was and what I
Yep,
wanted to see, I always say it wasn't my father's company anymore, but getting
Mhm.
back to who the foundation of who we were was important, and having that voice in order to speak up and do it the right way was kind of my turning point.
I love that. Thanks for your honesty and vulnerability in that, and for sharing that. The key part to that, though, is that you knew who you were. You knew your core. And as a leader, we have to be aware, right? We have to know what motivates us, what drives us, what our values are, what our ethics are. And so you felt that tension because you knew who you were. So that was a huge first step for you. And for listeners, it's important to know who you really are as a leader and what you do stand for, because that way, if it's being compromised or challenged, you can have a stand with it. So that's a great piece. And listeners, she mentioned her book. Her book is called The Missing Piece. It's kind of the story of Donato's and what has taken place there. And so I'd encourage you to get that. You'll see where you can pick that up in the show notes for our episode today. Well, Jen, you guys buy the place back. You buy back Donato's, your family company, and you said that's where you kind of jumped in with the 4 C's, which are these drivers, these values that drive the company forward and have been ever since. So let's kind of dive into those for a little bit, what they are and how those actually play out in real time.
Thank you. Yeah. So I think for me, reflecting back on how I lost myself during that time, how I got to the 4 C's was really starting with the first C, which is character. And
Mhm.
to your point, knowing who you are first in any situation, whether it's gray or whether it's truly you're feeling resistance or you're feeling like you're not aligned in the organization that you're working in or in the organization that you're leading, is going back to your character and truly understand who you are and what you stand for. And not just yourself, but surrounding yourself with people. I talk a
Mhm.
lot about it in the book because people started applauding the way I changed my leadership style, but it wasn't truly who I was. I wasn't being authentic to myself. And so it's really important to surround yourself with people who aren't afraid to challenge you, and those people around you that are like-minded in your character, so that you can be challenged, but you can hear it and you can accept it, and that it's constructive criticism. And sometimes in lack of having that around you, you can find yourself with people that are like, yes, you're doing the right things, you're going the right way,
Yep.
even though internally in your core it doesn't feel right. And so I start with character because I think it's important in knowing who you are and what your purpose is and what you stand for. The second one I talk about is courage,
Yeah.
and this is so much, so many things, right? It's like having the
Yeah.
courage to make mistakes, having the courage to admit your mistakes, having the courage to lean into things that you've never done before, like buy the company back,
Exactly.
having the courage to step into the unknown with faith, and knowing because there's something greater than you in all of it, that you can step into it with love, you can step into it with faith, but having the courage to do it. And I use that because I lost my courage. And when you
Mm.
lose your courage to have your voice and speaking into things and really making sure that you're, and the chief people officer, I was speaking for the people. When you lose that, then you lose the ability to influence any kind of change. And so, but it is having that courage to live your character out loud. And so oftentimes, we can have our values and we can live our lives, but sometimes we're afraid to live that character and those values out loud. And I
Yep.
think that it takes courage to do that. And one,
It does.
surrounding yourself with the right people of character, but two, having the courage to really live those values out loud in all that you do and decisions that you make and the reasons why
Yeah.
behind those decisions is really important. And the third one I talk about is conviction. And this one was a hard one for me because, especially in a family business and an entrepreneurial business, for me, you can grow up in a family business and have this umbilical cord to say,
Mhm.
am I doing this because it's a family business, it's legacy, I'm trying to make my parents proud, I'm trying
Mhm.
to live up to something that has been built around me, or am I truly doing this for the right reasons? And for me personally, I really had to go through that time period when we were buying the company back to check myself and to stay
Sure.
grounded in what are really my reasons in order to buy the company back. And it truly was because I believe in what we're doing, and I'll talk about
Mhm.
agape capitalism, but I believe in building a business based on the power of love. And had
Yeah.
I walked away from that, we wouldn't have the opportunity that we have and every day when we serve people to be able to serve people with love. And so that was truly a moment in time for me to just really focus internally, make sure my conviction was for the right reason and not because I was trying to make my dad proud through all of that. And the
Mm.
last C I talk about is compassion. And, I see it all the time. And sometimes it's easier to make decisions and be black and white and not walk through life with people.
Yeah.
So when sometimes we call it alumni, when people have to become an alumni of our company for whatever reason, that the true intent for me is that they write back and say, thank you for the opportunity to have been working there, that it was a time of goodwill. And and if you can always be honest with people. Jack Welch always said the kindest thing you can do for people is to be honest with them.
Right.
And I believe that. But sometimes people do that in a brutally honest way instead of with compassion. And I think compassion has to be at every level. And you can call it EQ now, which is the empathy
Yeah.
part of leadership. But it
Right.
has to be part of everything that we do, whether we're making hard decisions on people or building a business. Compassion is a
Mhm.
really, really big part of what we try to do.
Yeah. I love those. Hey, Intentional Leader podcast listeners, thank you for tuning in. The intentional leader is a true thing that we really believe at Reenergize Professional Coaching. And so we want to invite you to join us for the Intentional Leader Academy. The Intentional Leader Academy is a 6-month leadership development program. It is an open cohort, meaning people from multiple companies come in. It is hosted in the greater Columbus, Ohio area. We have people that fly in from all around the United States for this. We would encourage you to check it out for your leadership. This is not Leadership 101 at the Academy. This is like the graduate level leadership. You've been at it for a few years, you've had a few promotions, you have higher aspirations. So, from those frontline managers all the way through VPs, we have them attending the Intentional Leader Academy. Check out the QR code attached here or go to reenergize.com/academy. We'd love to have you be a part of the Intentional Leader Academy. Yeah, I love those. And, I always share with people that, we have to manage processes. We have all these processes to allow us to do business and to do business well and making pizza or whatever their business is. But leadership is people and it's totally different. You can't manage people. You have to influence them and lead them and have that compassion. And I love the 4 C's and how you laid that out. But I also like that as you're describing it, you're describing your path in it. So, for instance, you've used the word faith a lot, you've used the word love, you've used that idea of compassion in it. And I think it's important for people to realize those values are your values and therefore the values of Donato's. Not all businesses have the same values, we have different values, but we have to know what they are for our business and stick to them and know what they are. And so, like with us, something you and I were just talking about a little while ago, we are totally led by faith in what we do. And my wife and I have said from day one that God owns the business, He lets us run it. And even as we pursue business and we do as good a job as we can in trying to acquire a new business and have an impact on people, we hear no a lot, right? That's life, that's business. You don't get every sale. And when we hear no, we honestly feel in our hearts, we're like, God gives us a business He wants us to have. When we hear a no, there's a reason behind it and it's okay. But that's our convictions. And that's what drives us because we are here to truly impact people. That's what's driving you too. And no matter what somebody's values are, the values of their business, or even the one they work in, you need to have those convictions. So I love how that all plays out. I know you talked about the agape capitalism. You mentioned it really quick, and I know I've seen from you before this little coin you guys have created. Talk to us about agape capitalism and how you came up with that.
So I would say it's the way my dad's always operated and making decisions. He's kind of gotten back to, are we treating others the way they want to be treated, and are we leading with love? And so he didn't really coin, and no pun intended, coin the term, but he went and bought the domain for agape capitalism about 4 years ago.
Mm.
And the reason being is capitalism, some people think it's a good or bad thing. And the idea of capitalism is a great thing in America, that we're able
Right.
to be entrepreneurs and be able to change people's lives through the work that we do. But you have to make money, and really putting agape on top of that, which is building your business based on the power of love, and agape being obviously the truest, highest form of love, which is unconditional love. And so
Hmm.
how do you build a business based on unconditional love? And that coining the phrase is one thing, but we always take it to three when we make decisions, three simple tenets. And there's a coin that doesn't have our logo on it. It's more about the way my dad operates all his businesses, but it's really a powerful thing for us to make decisions personally, but as well professionally. And it's three tenets. It's the golden rule, so treating others the way you want to be treated. It's leading with love. And then if you do those two things, we believe you end up doing the right thing. And so it's those three tenets that big decisions, small decisions, we believe, every time that you're able to just follow that simple rule, and it sounds so simple, that you're able to come out on the other end having made the right decision. Sometimes it's really hard. I'll give an example when
Yeah.
we did, and it was right during the pandemic when restaurants were shutting down and we had to close the restaurant part of our business, and our sales declined significantly, just like
Sure.
everybody else when we first all entered this world of unknown pandemic.
Hmm.
And then, so we filed for the PPP, like a lot of people did at that time. And shortly after that, we were approved for about $8 million. And we had 2 weeks to accept it. And so, as soon as we applied and then when we were approved, our sales started taking off. And pizza
Wow.
became really the name of everybody's household, right? Like pizza for all our competitors, everybody
Yeah.
ended up having a really good year that year, but we didn't know what was going to happen. And so we had 2 weeks to decide. Our sales started going back up again, and talk about faith.
Yeah.
I called an emergency board meeting, and we had to make the decision. And so we have a really big one of these coins, but we pulled the coin out and we talked about the spirit of the law for the PPP and the letter of the law for the PPP. And while we were approved by the letter of the law for the PPP for 8 million, the spirit of the law was really truly about helping small businesses that weren't going to be able to make payroll. And
Hmm.
that's what the intention of it was behind it. And so, after really a short conversation, because we all got behind, are we leading with love? Are we treating others the way that they should be treated? That we really felt like that $8 million needed to be turned down. So we turned it down, because everybody was fighting for the same dollars, so that other small businesses
Yeah.
that really needed it would be able to prosper. And I say it's such a testament to God, because it was a leap of faith
Yeah.
off of
Absolutely.
these three tenants, but we ended up having a record year that year and ended up doing well beyond what we would have done by getting that I think it was 8.2 million.
Wow.
Not an easy thing to turn down, but also
No.
feels good, right? Like our conviction was it wasn't meant for us. No, we had no idea what was going to happen, but we took a leap of faith that it was the right thing to do, and because of that, we ended up having a pretty good year after that.
I love that story. And that's just standing by your truth and convictions. And so putting the coin to the test in your meeting. So that is fantastic. So I know Donato's is doing well today. You guys are almost 500 stores now across the country. You're looking at some new regions to dive into. One of the things that stuck out to me when I've had a chance to come to your headquarters there a couple different times now. And last time I was there, I noticed a table over on the side that had, I don't know what you call those, the pizza paddles, pizza boards, whatever you call them, but it had, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, 35 years. Food service in general is not known for longevity of employees. But yet you have these employees that are sticking around 30 some years. And it's not just one or two, there's a lot of them. What do you find is the secret to keeping those people? Because people stay as a culture, but what has Donato specifically done that warrants that type of loyalty to the organization?
Oh, thank you for asking that, and thanks for noticing.
Yeah.
So we've had people that have retired after 50 years. We had three people that started with my dad when he went into business. We do. We have it amazes me sometimes. We have delivery
Yeah.
drivers that have been with us for 35, 40 years. And
Wow.
that's not an easy job. And restaurants, not an
No.
easy job. So, it all goes back to, it's not anything that we're doing. It's the people that we hire in the restaurants, because we all know you don't work for a company, you work for the people. And, whether it's an hourly associate in our store or our general manager, it's about who they're working for. And so I think that what we've been able to do, and not me, but our managers in our restaurants or the leaders here have been able to create a sense of family, and sometimes dysfunctional. But I think being a family based on values is what attracts people to build a company. And then they can be themselves, be authentic and transparent at work. And it is about allowing people to be themselves. So I think
Yeah.
I remember one day pulling up at the office during the McDonald's days under the arches. And again, all the people were great people. It was just a different environment, but really truly feeling like I had to put armor on in order to come in. And
Mm.
I felt I did. It was just like, okay, this is a person I have to be when I go in, versus I want people to pull up to their place, whether it's the restaurant on Thurman Avenue or it's in DC or across the country or a home office, where they can just come in and be themselves. And that's of all people, right? Where they feel included, they feel a sense of community, they feel like that store, because let's face it, we work with people almost as much, if not more, than we're able to be with our own
Yeah.
families sometimes, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And we want that place to be an environment that is a reflection of that general manager, but that general manager feels like they can be authentic. And that's I think the beauty of any culture. And we don't get it right all the time by any means. We make mistakes. And I think the most important thing you can do is, when you have that toxicity in your environment, is that you're able to confront it. And it doesn't mean the person's a bad person, but you help them become alumni, and
Hmm.
they will be able to find a place where they feel like a sense of community. So I think the inclusiveness is important. Diversity of thought and people are really important, but it's the people that are leading every single individual restaurant. So which why I believe in franchising, because they're the families who are in that
Yeah.
community and they're running those restaurants. And I'm a huge proponent of franchising for that reason.
Yeah. So let's talk about franchising for a minute and the fact of how you guys have grown, because the culture you're embodying, what you're trying to get across, many people think for a franchise, I just need to have the cash, right? Whatever the cash amount is to buy it's an Autos franchise at this region. Obviously, you must be doing some sort of vetting of potential franchisees to make sure that the culture carries through. How does that play out?
Thank you for that. We don't always get it right,
Yeah.
because I would say there's a lot of people out there with money that are looking, and people think restaurants are fun, and they are fun, but it's also a lot of hard work. I mean,
Yeah.
there's ups and downs right now, as you could probably see on the sales environment. Everybody's discounting. Everything's $5, and whether it's McDonald's to casual dining, like everybody's in this game of, our consumers are a lot more discerning with their dollars, so they're going to
Yeah.
put their dollars where they feel value, and that value means experience. And so I think we've gotten it right a lot, but we've also gotten it wrong a lot. And a franchise partner, I think the most important thing about that is that they're like-minded, because we call them partners because it's a long-term relationship, right? So it's
Hmm.
a 20-year relationship with a franchise partner. So we
Wow.
could go out, we could be a lot bigger if we were just looking for money for growth. But we are a lot more discerning about who we bring on board and who we partner with, because they're not just representing themselves and their community. They are putting our name on their building, and to do a good thing and to build a business based off the power of love. That is a vetting process. So we go through a long process with people. I meet every franchise partner. Actually, the next
Wow.
generation, my son and my daughter are also in the business, meet with that franchise partner, because in 20 years, they're the ones that are going to be in business with them, right? And so we have franchise partners that are now third generation
That's
in the
awesome.
business. And so it is, again, you don't always get it right, but making sure that you said it earlier, the process is really, really important. You have to have a process, just like hiring people, you have to have a process. but it is really truly taking the time, and sometimes it might take longer to make sure that you've got the right people behind the brand name when we open on the block in Oklahoma, because they're Donatos to their community.
Yeah, and especially now because I'm guessing it's a lot of new regions, so it's people's first taste of Donato's, both physically with the pizza as well as that culture with the people.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, I love that. So you are now third generation with your family in Donatos itself. I know your dad is still doing a lot from the kind of the R&D side, research and development, having fun, and there's been constant transitions there. What are some of those areas you guys are diving into now regionally? So some of our listeners may say, "I've never heard of Donatos. You coming towards me? Are you able to share regions you're looking to get into?"
Well, absolutely. So we just signed three different franchise partners for Texas. We are expanding in Oklahoma, and I'll back you up a little bit because of our partnership with Red Robin, who approached us
Ah,
6 years ago, and their whole idea, it was probably one of the first ghost kitchen ideas, was to put a Donato's inside of their restaurant. And so that's twofold. One is you can
uh-huh.
go to a Red Robin. We're in about 273 of them across the United States. You can sit down in the restaurant and you can order Donato's pizza off their menu. So they kept our brand, the integrity of our brand,
Nice.
but they serve it in their restaurants. But you can also, if you're in California, pull up Donato's on your digital web, and Donato's will pull up, and it'll be delivered out of a Red Robin, and you may not even know it. So we're able to expand our presence that way, which has been a really great partnership. So they're actually a franchise of Donato's, so they franchise
Wow.
with us. So they have development rights. They pay us the development fees. They pay us a percentage of the pizza sales, and then we partner with them and their restaurants. That really helped us a lot because it helped open up our distribution channels across the United States. So now that we are able to go into Texas and Oklahoma, and so all of that, we're doing it traditional and non-traditional. So we have ghost restaurants as well as traditional restaurants. But what I'm really excited about moving forward is, and you mentioned my dad,
Yeah.
he is working in our innovation center. So he's 81, and I'll back you up just a minute ago. Years ago, invented a piece of
Mhm.
equipment called the Pep-O-Matic, and that's made by our Grote manufacturing company now. But it was all about slicing our pepperoni at the same thickness every single time, so our customer would get the same product every single time.
Mhm.
And he did it manually on a very manual band blade operation that he invented kind of on a garbage can prototype, and it didn't work out. So it was early 70s. And then he had advice to go to all the frozen pizza companies and try to sell them the piece of equipment because it was too big for our restaurant. And so he did, and he got a patent on it, and actually ended up automating it. And that's
Wow.
become the Grote Manufacturing Company. And I say all that to say, my dad's mind never stops. Like he's constantly trying to
Yeah.
find a better way for our restaurants. And so he just now got a patent on we call it agape automation,
Mhm.
and a patent on a smart saucer. So you put the pizza underneath and it's on a turntable and you press a button and it sauces the pizza. They're in the process of doing a smart cheese application. And then we have also in test a smart pep where you put the pepperoni sticks on the top, but now it's smaller tabletop and it actually peps the pizza just by the press of a button. And so all about automation. And what's been beautiful about that is this next generation is all about automation, right? And technology.
Right.
And so, they'd much rather come in and be able to use some type of automation versus doing everything by hand, but being able to really build love into the automation side of it as well. And so I say all that to say he just got two more patents on these two pieces of equipment, and he also
Wow.
has an agape automation cutter. And so we're working with a company in Canada, actually, and it is a fully automated with robotic arm type of pizza on demand where it could go in airports, it could go in a lot of different places, but it's completely fully automated. But we're taking those modular pieces and putting them in our back of the house so that we're able to be not fully automated because we'll always have humans,
Sure.
people in our restaurants because that's an important aspect of who we are, be able to serve our pizza. So I would say a lot of innovation on automating the the manual labor that goes on, so that we can allow our people to be much more interfacing with our customers. That's where my dad is working on the edge, inventing that stuff, and we're able to apply that to our restaurants, which has been a lot of fun.
That's fantastic. I just love that whole story because it's family, but it's stepping outside of the box, right? It's not saying just we're doing pizza. It's like, how can we keep doing this better, and how can we improve the culture and improve what's taking place? So incredible story. I'm sure your dad would be an incredible person just to sit and listen to for hours with the stories that he has.
That is very
Absolutely.
true. Very true.
Yeah. Well, Jane, it's been awesome to have you on here today. I feel like we could keep on going different avenues with this, but I know our listeners in the show notes are going to be able to see where they can get your book and some other links to different things, and including you. At one time, we're on Undercover Boss. And what I love about that episode is the character piece came through and how you dealt with some difficult situations with employees and how you really managed through that. So I appreciate that. But I hope our people will track you down and find Donato's in their area. I want to finish with this, Jane. We finish every episode with the same question. We want this to be very practical and intentional for our listeners. So what is something intentional our listeners can do today to lead more effectively?
There's power in the pause, I always say. And I think sometimes as leaders, we get recognized and rewarded for making decisions quickly, thoughtfully, analytically, but also quickly, right? And so I just think oftentimes we don't stop and pause and be mindful and prayerful and surrendering it. That's hard sometimes when you're challenged with certain things that may come at you in a very different way. And it's sometimes really hard to pause. And pausing for us is really taking this coin out and reflecting on these three things, and then making sure that you're intentional about surrendering it and, praying about the outcome, but also surrendering the outcome to what the best thing is supposed to happen and having that leap of faith. So for me, by the way, you can get these coins on our Agape Capitalism site. It's a nonprofit. But the intent is these aren't our coins. This isn't Agape Capitalism, isn't just a Donato's thing. We hope that it's something that gets spread across the world because it's a human value, and that's just treating others the way you want to be treated, and building your businesses based on the power of love. But I would say there's power in the pause. And if in our highest anxiety moments of not knowing what the right thing to do is, if we can just pause and really reflect and surrender and give it over to the Lord.
Fantastic. I love it. True to my heart, true to life, and true to the character of Jane and Donato's. Jane, thank you so much. It's been great to have you as a guest on the Intentional Leader podcast. Blessings to you and your family and your broad Donato's family as God continues to bless the business.
Thank you. Blessings to you too.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Intentional Leader Podcast presented by Reenergize Professional Coaching. Be sure to see the show notes for links to Reenergize Professional Coaching and links to contact our guests. Now, hit that subscribe button so that you are alerted with every new episode of the Intentional Leader Podcast.